Most people don't believe it's happening. You can be tortured in your own home. No one will believe you. Your brain has been rewired to feel the other. I call it the empathy machine. We can overpower all senses. We can create false sense of touch, make you think ghosts are touching you. We can, create smells that aren't really there, tastes. So you can imagine all the trickery that we're capable of doing, from hauntings to being beamed up by aliens, being anal probed. So unfortunately, it gets into very dark topics of trauma-based conditioning we do remotely, rape, torture, etc. The brain doesn't distinguish between these signals. And so at the comfort of your own home, it's as if they brought you into a lab for alien dissection and whatnot.
Let's go to our first story. It says it was 2016 and my friends were having a sleepover at my house. We lived in quite an urban area and some of my two friends met in a park not far from my house. I arrived and my friend Jacob had already been there. He looked very pale and off color. So I asked him what was wrong and he said he just did not feel very well. We brushed it off and joked around until Josh, our other friend, came, and as soon as he saw us, he looked concerned and asked us if we were okay. Confused, I reassured him we were fine, but Jacob felt a bit ill, but nothing serious. He acted surprised and said I was pale, and so was Jacob. Again, I brushed it off. We went back to mine. Nothing eventful happened that whole evening until about 11 at night. We started to hear gentle tapping and scratching upstairs. This unnerved us as my parents, who I still lived with, as I was only 15, were out of town. The place they were going to had no reception, and we did not have a landline. I don't know if this is a thing in America, but it's a phone that you don't need reception to use, but need to be plugged in and are in most homes. So there was no way that they could contact us, but if we had an emergency, we could call the landline for the hotel, B&B they were staying in. We were getting our bathroom done up and refurbished, so the only toilet we had was a portaloo in the garden. Even though the sounds had been coming from upstairs and not the garden, we were still scared to go out back. So we all went together and pissed in separate corners of the garden. They finished before me, and I thought it would be funny to run inside and shut the door. I calmly finished, take a deep breath, prepare myself to sprint the 25 meters or so to get back to the house. I turn to stop. Jacob is standing in front of me. I jump and then laugh, realizing that he got me good. However, he did not laugh. He did not smile or anything. He just had a blank expression on his face. This sent me a big shiver. I was genuinely confused. I asked him if he was all right, and he said nothing. I went to get Josh, and as I walked past him, he grabbed my arm, and in a voice that was like Jacob's but not Jacob's, he said, "Lock the tent, mate." I ran inside, locked the door, tear down the hallway, and get into my room, and there I see Josh and Jacob watching TV. I explained to them everything I just saw, and straight away Josh tells me it was a skinwalker. We look out the window, and there's no one out there. Confused, I asked him what a skinwalker was. In the UK, there are not any Native Americans, and not a lot anyway. He told me his uncle married a Native woman in Canada and told him all these stories about them and how they shapeshift into relatives, friends, or animals to trick you and mess with you. I'm at the point of tears, so we all go to bed. In the early hours of the morning, I wake up to what I think is a bear on top of me mauling me. The pain I was feeling was immense, and I could see blood all over my chest. My friend stood up next to me trying to calm me as the bear fades and the blood leaves my chest. Suddenly, I'm no longer in pain, and Jacob and Josh both tell me they saw me screaming and trying to punch something as if it was right over my face. I explain I saw a huge bear on top of me. We stay up until the morning when the phone rings. On the way back from the trip, my parents had got a phone call telling them my older brother, who lives in America, was killed in a bear attack in his sleep while camping. To this day, I still believe that my dream experience that night was because at the same time across the world, my brother was getting attacked. And to make it even weirder, the skinwalker also said to me, "Lock the tent, mate," as if I already knew my brother would be killed that night because he did not lock his tent.
In April of 2011, I moved to my aunt's house. My aunt has 4 kids who at the time lived at her house. My aunt works at night So usually me and my son are home alone. Now the story takes place in the summer of 2011, and my cousins were out with their friends, and my aunt was working. My son goes to sleep at 8 p.m. So the story begins, and it was 9 o'clock in the morning, and I hear a knock. And I didn't know who it was, so I glanced out through the window to see, and I saw a cop. So I opened the door, and the cop said that she was doing a wellness check on me and my son. And I told her that we were fine, so my son's asleep, and it's just me, I'm watching TV. And she said, "Are you sure you're okay?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, who called?" And she said that someone in the house called. And I said, "You mean from a cell phone?" And she says, "No." She says, the phone that's connected inside the house. And I said, "Well, no, that's impossible because there is no phone that's connected to the house. Everyone's got a cell phone, and my cell phone's off." And she asked again if we were okay, and I said yes. And she says, "Well, that's strange." And she said that, "Well, maybe you should tell the phone company what's going on." And I said, "Okay, well, I'll pass that message to my aunt." Now, this happened 3 other times. The second time it happened, I was again home alone at 1 o'clock. And then the other 2 times happened when my cousin was here. And again, it was 1 o'clock in the morning. And I still think that it's so strange that 4 times the cops came and they said the same thing. That someone in the house called, not by cell phone, but the phone that was connected inside the house. Another strange story happened that same year. Me and my son lived in the basement of my aunt's house. Now you go down the stairs, straight on the right hand side, there's a door which leads into my cousin's room. And then on the other side is a open space with 2 beds on each side and toys that are against the wall that's by the stairs. Now, what happened was I was in my cousin's room, and my cousin has a favorite chair that's like a few feet away from the TV. His room is really small and cramped, so that's the reason. But I was sitting in the chair, and I was watching a funny movie, and the door opened, and I said to my son, "What's wrong?" And there was no reply. And I thought that was strange, and then I asked again. I said, "What's wrong?" Nothing. No reply. So I turned around, and I didn't see him. And it was so strange because I felt somebody was watching me, and the hairs of my arms was sticking up. Now, like I said, this happened during the summer, the same year, and around the same time. And the thing is, my aunt's air conditioner was off. So how in the heck did that door open? That was strange. So, like I said before, the door opened, and I swear I felt like somebody was watching me, and the hairs of my arms started sticking up. It was though it was like electricity in the air. And then a gust of wind went right through the chair and right through me. It was as if God, it was almost as if I walked into a freezer. It was that chilly. It was so weird. And I got up quickly, checked up on my son, and my son is dead asleep. I ran upstairs to see if someone was home, and nobody was home. And that was really weird. So I went back downstairs, and I started hearing noises, like somebody was walking upstairs. So I went back upstairs again to see. Nobody was there. And I decided, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna ignore it. So that's what I did. I went back downstairs. I went back to my cousin's room, watched the movie, and then I went straight to bed. And then there's another story that happened in 2016, which is recent. It was about 8 p.m. Now my aunt's children, 4 children, do not live in that house anymore. So it's just me, my aunt, and my son. It was 8 p.m. and I was watching Dateline on Channel 5. And I didn't want my son to hear what I was watching, so I put it low. And my son was downstairs in his playroom downstairs. The door was open. And I'm watching, and my son starts saying, "Mom! Mom!" So I muted the TV, and I said, "What's wrong, sweetie?" And he says, "Did you hear the little boy?" I said, "What little boy?" He says, "There's a little boy." I said, "No, sweetie, I didn't hear anything." I said, "But if it freaks you out, then come upstairs with me, grab some toys. Come on, it's okay." And he goes, "No, it's okay, Mom." So he stayed downstairs for a couple hours, and then he went straight to bed. And those are the weirdest things that happen in my aunt's house. Yeah. I can't explain any of it. So, okay, thank you.
This is an article from Mysterious Universe entitled The Menacing Haunted House of the Black Forest by Brent Swanser. Forests have a way of drawing to them stories of the paranormal and hauntings. There is something about these darkened, remote places with their trees raising their skeletal branches to the heavens and their spooky sounds that invite such tales. Add to this stories of an intensely haunted old house out in the woods, and you have a perfect recipe for a creepy case. Lying out in the thick woods of a rural area of the state of Colorado is just such a mysterious house, which has gone on to be considered one of the most haunted places in the United States. The place known as Black Forest is in an unincorporated town that lies in El Paso County, Colorado, near Colorado Springs, within a region traditionally known as the Pineries, which once sprawled over a 1,000 square mile area and is so named due to the high concentration of ponderosa pines found here. The sparsely populated area is well known for its slow-paced lifestyle, crisp, clean air, beautiful nature, and breathtaking picturesque vistas. It was for these reasons that in 1991 a couple by the name of Stephen and Beth Lee moved to the area from Louisiana along with their 2 sons in order to purchase a secluded 2-story log home off Swan Road and surrounded by untouched wilderness that was to be their dream home. What they didn't know at the time was that it was all to become anything but a dream. Unbeknownst to the family at the time, the property had previously been owned by a man who allegedly had experienced intense paranormal activity there. Yet he did not inform the Lees at the time because he apparently did not think anyone would believe him, or worse yet, that he would be laughed at. The family moved in without having any awareness of this previous strangeness, and had not heard any rumors of the supposed haunting either, which made it all the more surprising when an escalating series of very bizarre phenomena began to plague them in their new home soon after moving in. By all accounts, the phenomena started within barely a week of moving in, and began somewhat innocuously enough. The couple's 2 young sons began to complain of strange lights in their rooms, as well as what appeared to be shadows moving about, and this could have been chalked up to the children's overactive imaginations if it weren't for the fact that Stephen and Beth also started experiencing the same thing. In addition to this, flashes of light would be seen in the forest, doors in the home closed on their own, lights or electrical appliances would turn on or off by themselves, and there were sometimes heard thumps, bangs, and knocks on the roof or walls, as well as footsteps and even anomalous music that seemed to come from nowhere. More ominously was an odd chemical odor that would spring up out of nowhere to pervade the house, sometimes so strong and overpowering that it stung the nostrils and eyes. All of this phenomena quickly grew in intensity, culminating in frightening experiences that Beth Lee would describe in the book Haunted Places, the National Directory, thus: "One day we came home and it was like the 4th of July in our living room and bedroom. We had all kinds of lights flashing through, and it sounded like people stomping across the roof. We would lay in bed at night and hear chains rattling. One night we woke up and heard orchestra music. Strange things started happening every day." End quote. As scary as all of this was, Stephen did not at first believe this to be anything paranormal at all, and suspected it was all the work of trespassers trying to scare them off the land. In order to combat this very threat, he spent a great deal of time and money installing a state-of-the-art video surveillance system, and it was soon found that video and photographs taken would more often than not display all manner of strange images, including orbs, streaks of light, and, more ominously, glowing, undefined outlines of human figures, faces, and even spectral images of animals out in the woods and near the home, several of the images of which were published in Fate magazine in November 1994. Thinking this was a technical malfunction, he tried several different types of cameras and film, but got the same results every time no matter what he did. On top of this, the motion detector alarms that they had installed were prone to going off without any evidence of anyone being there. Stephen Lee began contacting the El Paso County Sheriff's Department and even hired a private investigator, still convinced that pranksters or burglars were behind it all. Authorities would make 45 separate trips to the home, yet never found any evidence of a break-in or any criminal activity. The only somewhat unusual evidence offered up was a cloth saturated with that sour chemical odor, but it was found to not be any sort of dangerous substance. After a while, the constant calls coming in from the Lee home caused them to believe he was perhaps delusional and paranoid, and they started to more or less ignore the complaints. By this time, the Lees were becoming more and more aware that just maybe there was actually something paranormal at work, and they reached out to a TV program called Sightings in 1995, who would eventually do a whole series on the home and show it to be far stranger than anyone knew. When the crew arrived, they did so with a well-known psychic, Echo Bodine, who was immediately humbled by the sheer concentration of spiritual energy in the house, and she stated that there were at least 20 entities residing there, with one in particular described as being very powerful and malevolent. The whole production was plagued with mechanical malfunctions, inexplicable electromagnetic interference, and cameras and tripods knocked over by unseen hands. More sinister still, at one point in the investigation, one of the crew members was reportedly attacked by something unseen, which jumped into her and supposedly left her whole body numb, with feeling in her limbs only regained after being physically escorted out of the house as she cried uncontrollably in terror. She would later describe it as feeling as if something had been trying to possess her body. So intense was this weird activity while the crew was there that they returned 6 months later to investigate more. This time they brought another psychic named Peter James, who also immediately claimed that he had never felt psychic energy of the magnitude he felt there. As he walked through the home, James claimed that much of this energy seemed to be focused on an upstairs closet and from a 100-year-old mirror kept in the master bedroom, both of which he speculated were some sort of vortex connecting the physical world to the spiritual. Adding weight to these claims were photographs then taken of the mirror, with many of them showing ghostly faces staring back or strange streaks of light. Indeed, so much anomalous footage was taken over the course of these visits by sightings to the Lee home that it is considered one of the most well-documented hauntings ever. James would say of it, "There is an energy here unlike any I've ever experienced in all the years I've investigated anomalous activity. So the Black Forest is indeed a very important place that should be further investigated." End quote. Spookily, not long after filming wrapped, James woke one day to find a painful welt on his forehead for no apparent reason. A visit to the doctor and a CAT scan later, and the welt was still unexplainable. However, when going through photographs taken at the Lee house, among the many images of the myriad paranormal activity was a picture of James standing in a room with what appears to be a bright dagger of light pointed directly at his forehead, something he had not seen at the time. It was a very odd experience in a case already dripping with the odd. With the TV program and the rumors raging about the haunted Lee home out there in the woods, it got to the point that even State Senator Charles Duke went to visit the home in 1996 to check it out. Duke was highly skeptical at the time, but his mind was soon changed when he experienced strange phenomena himself, and even managed to capture on film the ghostly, smoke-like form of what looked like a dog, forcing him to concede, quote, "There are certainly some anomalies that don't belong there. I don't as yet know what they are. I was shocked. I'm not a believer yet, but certainly there is something going on there. There's certainly something unusual. There's no doubt about it." End quote. Eerily, the image taken by Duke supposedly resembles a dog the Lees had which had died 10 years prior, and this same phantom dog would go on to be routinely sighted and photographed in the area, sometimes actually hovering off the ground. Another skeptic who was surprised by the location was electromagnetics expert Bill Gibbons, who went in planning to debunk the whole thing and came away convinced something strange was going on, saying, "I saw spectacular light shows that could be seen with the naked eye. It's an extremely active site, and there's nothing that Steve or his wife are doing to cause this." End quote. In the following years, countless psychics and paranormal investigators, as well as other skeptics, have been to the Lee home, many coming away utterly perplexed by the startling intensity of the activity there, earning it a reputation as being one of the most haunted locations in the United States, if not the world. What is going on here, and why should this particular house draw to it so much paranormal activity and such an enormous concentration of spiritual energy? One local Hopi shaman has explained that the reason is because it is located on the site of what he refers to as a rainbow vortex, a doorway between the worlds of the living and the dead. Other psychics and investigators have similarly come to the same conclusion, that the house, for whatever reasons, holds a mysterious vortex or gateway that allows entities to pass back and forth between worlds unhindered. In this theory, these wraiths and specters are not necessarily haunting this location, but rather this is one of the few places on our plane of reality through which they can arrive here, sort of like an interdimensional train station. Interestingly, despite all of this, one of the biggest skeptics of the paranormal explanation has been Stephen Lee himself. Even in the face of all of this unexplained phenomena, he would go on to become more and more convinced that rather than ghosts, he was being stalked by some shady government organization for nefarious purposes. The idea that there were trespassers on his property went on to evolve to become a web of conspiracy of government agents and secret experiments, and Lee has said he believes that they are interested in the family for the purpose of testing out biological weapons, psychic warfare, mind control, and quote-unquote laser holograms. He would claim that he had seen black-clad armed men prowling around outside the home, and blamed these enigmatic individuals for cutting power to the home and spraying them with unknown noxious chemicals, as well as following him around all over town. He has said of these ideas, "I truly think the U.S. government has a hand in this. I don't think any one individual could get away with this for this period of time without getting caught. The government does testing out here that has military implications." End quote. Lee has even gone so far as to try to bring in the FBI to investigate his claims, but they have responded that there is not much they can do in the absence of any evidence of a federal crime being committed. Whether this is all caused by supernatural forces or secretive government agents, the Lee house has nevertheless managed to continue over the years to prove itself as a wellspring for the bizarre, with countless reports of apparitions, strange lights, and other varied phenomena from the premises. Whatever is going on here, it has managed to go on to become one of the most intense paranormal hotspots in the country, and will likely remain an unexplained conundrum for some time to come.
No touch torture is a whole new topic, a whole new category. Most people don't believe it's happening. You can be tortured in your own home. No one will believe you. Your brain has been rewired to feel the other. I call it the empathy machine. We can overpower all senses. We can create false sense of touch, make you think ghosts are touching you. We can, create smells that aren't really there, tastes. So you can imagine all the trickery that we're capable of doing, from hauntings to being beamed up by aliens, being anal probed. So unfortunately, it gets into very dark topics of trauma-based conditioning we do remotely, rape, torture, etc. The brain doesn't distinguish between these signals. And so at the comfort of your own home, it's as if they brought you into a lab for alien dissection and whatnot.